Joining us now from Aipac in Washington is David Bedein. David Bedein is the director of the Israel Resource News Agency and director of the Center for Near East Policy Research. Shalom, David.
Good afternoon from Washington.
So you spent the past few days at the Aipac conference, and you wanted to share with us some of your feelings there today.
Well, first of all, there's a lack of, at this conference, once again, the third year in a row, Israel's national camp is not here. What is here is you have Ehud Barak, who is outgoing lame duck defense minister. He's here, giving the impression to everyone that the two-state solution is around the corner. But another person who was here, a fellow named Gait al-Omri, who is from the American Task Force for Palestine. Here's a guy who is the most effective Palestinian Authority lobbyist, the most effective, propagandist for the other side, and he's brought in front of 1,200 people who come to a special session on what's going to happen between Israel and the PLO, and he convinces everyone that if Israel just hands over Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, there will be peace. And no one is there on the panel to contradict him. Not a Moti Kedar, not a Ron Shaked, not an Arnon Gross, not a Pinchas Inbari, not Michael Woodlansky. There's so many people who know Arabic who would say, "Excuse me, but your purpose is all of Palestine." There he is, in front of 1,200 people, and he has a guy from the Washington Institute named David Makovsky who just co-authored an article with him, and two of them talking about all their desires for peace, equating the Palestinian Authority and Israel, and he is downplaying the issue of incitement. When I asked him about Abbas's praise for Mahmoud Abbas, Mahmoud Abbas's praise for the Mufti 6 weeks ago, he just shoves it off. It's not so important, and then David Makovsky more or less agrees with him. Now, this is something which is shocking to see, because AIPAC is openly the lobby for Israel on Capitol Hill. Why then, if it's a lobby for Israel on Capitol Hill, do they bring the most effective Arab lobbyist and don't even contradict him? So that's the negative of what I saw here today, amongst other people who spoke on the issue of the PLO state as if it's a fait accompli and is the policy of Israel, which it isn't yet.
David, some would say you got to know your enemy.
No, there is a difference between knowing the enemy and being propagandized by the enemy. If in the past, our agency has brought people from the PLO to speak, and then we bring someone articulate who tears them apart. Now, when you have a guy lying through his teeth, who worked as the foreign policy advisor to the Palestinian Authority, to Abbas directly, and someone who is in charge of lobbying on Capitol Hill and knows how to speak in a convincing way, and he tries to convince everyone in AIPAC that all they want, all the Palestinian Authority wants, is West Bank and Gaza, and then there'll be peace. And then you don't have someone on the other side who schmeises them completely, talks about their maps and all of their purposes and everything they're doing to try to gain all of Palestine back. Then you fail in your cause. And by the way, AIPAC is never invited to the PLO conferences or to present their point of view. Never. Now, what he did was, it got even worse, because they had this guy from the American Task Force for Palestine, Omari, who wrote a joint article together with David Makovsky, as if the desire for peace on both sides is exactly the same. Now, that's the negative of what I saw happen here, and even more compounded the fact that there was, again, for the third year in a row, despite the pleadings of our agency, no one from the Israel's national camp came here to make any presentation, and they would have been welcome to do so, but they don't. They don't think it's important. It's very important.
Now, David, tell us your organization, your activity is focused a lot about the UN, specifically Unrwa. Did you see any of that topic there at the AIPAC?
Now I'm going to get into the positive. A very positive thing happened for the first time ever at AIPAC. AIPAC had a special session on the issue of Unrwa, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency, and how to reform Unrwa. Former member of Knesset Einat Wolf made a presentation, and Dr. Asaf Morawski made a presentation. And Unrwa sent their representatives. And they explained why, even if you want what they call a two-state solution, it's ridiculous for the American government to support a system of keeping people in refugee camps under the promise and premise of the right of return. And now, in a little while, there's going to be a session of activists, people who want to encourage donor countries to cut funding, or to at least condition funding to Unrwa, that they were on the condition that they would stop promoting the right of return and show some accountability for what they're doing with their money. So this is the first time Aipac ever did this. I know that Moshe Alon, a very senior member of the Israeli government, had sent out a letter asking that Unrwa be dealt with, and for the first time it happened. So I've given you the negative of the whole atmosphere here being pro-PLO state atmosphere, and no one from the national camp, and bringing in a top PLO spokesman with no contradiction, and the positive of what happened here with Unrwa. For the first time, Aipac got on the bandwagon to try to reform Unrwa. So that's my summary of what happened here.
David Bedein, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. I wish you all the best, and it's not too early to say Chag Kasher v'Sameach.